Welcome to Making Eating Healthy Again, the podcast where we simplify the complexities of modern nutrition and guide you back to the basics of wholesome eating. In today's world, dietary recommendations become a maze of conflicting advice and overwhelming research and trending fads that make eating healthy feel more like an unsolvable puzzle. Each day brings new headlines on superfoods, diet plans, and miracle supplements, leaving us more confused than ever about what we should really be eating. Join us as we cut through the noise to uncover simple, science-backed practices that can transform your health, delight your taste buds, and make eating healthy a joyous journey once more. Whether you're a seasoned foodie or just beginning your quest for better health, we've got you covered with insights, motivational stories, and practical tips. I'm Woody Huffines, and I am fortunate to be able to join registered dietitian Danielle Carr each week to talk to you about how you can make eating healthy again. Welcome back, Make Eating Healthy Again podcast. We talked in the last podcast about this was going to be a two-part thing because the idea of why insulin is important and all the stuff that insulin affects in terms of metabolic health is the first step, and then the next step in that discussion is how do you control your insulin? How do you reach a point of metabolic health? And we believe, Danielle and I believe, that the way to do that is to monitor your carbohydrate intake and manage the carbohydrate intake in terms of the amount of carbohydrates and the kinds of carbohydrates to reach a state of metabolic health by managing your insulin. Fairly said?
Yes, beautifully said.
There's an interesting, I am now in the 65-year-old group.
Congratulations.
I will be in 9 days. I'll be 65. So I'm now in Medicare.
How do you feel
I'm in the Medicare world. And as the Medicare world came about, one of the things that happens in Medicare, if you have a Medicare supplement to pay for the things that Medicare doesn't, I got free gym memberships to like every gym. And there's like 20 gyms within 20 minutes of my house that I can have a gym membership in.
You have no excuse.
And so I started working out. Started doing, and starting slowly because I don't want to hurt myself and do that. But that's interesting because in this metabolic health thing, one of the things that we've talked about is that at the end of the day, you cannot outrun a bad diet.
That's right.
You cannot exercise enough to solve the problem of eating stuff you shouldn't eat. Mm-hmm. Exercise is important, and exercise has a lot of other things that are beneficial. But at the end of the day, it's about what you eat and how you eat. You agree with that?
100%. Your body's like this beautiful kingdom, but you can't, the king being nutrition, the queen being exercise. And you can't run this metabolic kingdom without that king and queen.
You can't outrun a bad diet, and there are things that exercise does. Before we talk about how you eat low carb, I just kind of want to take a little side break because I'm exercising. Hello.
Yes.
And it's a real simple routine. What I'm doing right now as I start working back up the curve is like spend 10 minutes on the rower, which is a more full body exercise that also is very much a workout of the posterior chain. Yeah. And I think posterior chain strength is really important as you age. And then I'll spend 10 minutes on a stair climber for quads and leg strength, and then spend 10 minutes on a treadmill or 10 minutes on a bicycle. So about 30 minutes of cardiovascular kind of stuff. And then another 15, 20 minutes of kettlebell.
Okay.
Posterior chain, kettlebell swings, shoulder presses, windmills, things that are whole body exercises that are slightly loaded. Kind of thing.
Hold on. I love that you're already doing this, especially since you're just getting back into exercising, because a lot of people don't understand how great kettlebells are or how to do them or what the names are. So it's like typical Woody. You just, oh, yeah. All right. I know how to do this. Let me just think of what I read 30 years ago. Yeah, got it.
Well, I will probably get back to where I'm doing barbell squats and barbell deadlifts.
Sure, but what you're doing is amazing.
But right now, what I'm looking at is functional strength and doing things with core to get the core back in some semblance of order, so that other barbell exercises are going to something that I can do without hurting myself, and I mean, the kettlebell, you can do kettlebell forever, and it's a really good way of having dynamic movement, of having functional movement.
Functional is everything.
And it's relatively easy to do.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm back. I wanted to talk about exercise because along with what you eat, the value of exercise, and I want to talk about this before we start talking about exercise, because as we talked about in a previous episode, this whole calories in, calories out versus the carbohydrate insulin model is incredibly important to me. And it's not calories in, calories out. And I don't care how much you exercise. If you're eating bad stuff, it's not going to work.
That's right. Amen.
But having said that, the exercise, having cardiovascular exercise, doing strength training, doing things that use up the glycogen that's stored, because your body's going to store the glycogen. There is no amount of low carb eating or no carb eating, carnivore eating, that your body's not going to store glycogen.
Right.
Because your body, for immediate need, is going to go and recruit that glycogen. So it's going to be there. And if you and the value of exercise for me metabolically, it's not about weight loss, and it's not about how you're gonna get thin by exercising, because that's not where it's at. What you're gonna do is you're gonna train your body to do three things. First of all, use that glycogen and cycle that glycogen, which is a metabolic function that's really important to the body, which upregulates its ability to respond to insulin, upregulates its ability to respond to leptin, upregulates its ability to respond to ghrelin, upregulates its ability to respond to mTOR, and the protein pathways. All happens from exercise.
Yes.
So that there's this chain of things that metabolically exercise does that gives you a much better metabolic base to operate from, because your muscles are very metabolically active, and that is where most of the glycogen is stored, and it's the first place that your body can put whatever sugars or carbohydrates that you got before it stores it to fats to fill up the glycogen, and having trained muscles helps you do that. And third, it was a long time for people to understand how metabolically active fat is. Mm-hmm. Right. Fat is really, really metabolically active.
Absolutely.
For a long time, it was kind of the idea was that fat was just, you stored stuff there and the fat got big, and the apoptosis in fat cells and how fat cells create necrotic processes because they can only be so big, and there's a whole bunch of stuff with fat cells, and exercise helps regulate the metabolic actions around that.
Yes.
So before we start talking about how you eat low carb and why low carb is important in our minds, I think it's important for us to make the point that exercise is incredibly important. And exercise has a lot to do with your health in terms of your mental abilities and in terms of your metabolic health, but that exercise is not the answer to being metabolically healthy. Exercise is an adjunct, because you can exercise to a fare thee well, and if you're eating the wrong stuff, it doesn't matter how much you exercise, you cannot be metabolically healthy for it.
Right. Your body is still going to store that excess sugar as fat. It's not going to take away fatty liver disease or any issues with your kidneys. And when you exercise, that's helping that as well with your salt and your sodium intake and excreting that. We'll get into that in a little bit later, but you're 100% right. You've got your diet is 80%, exercise is 20%. But if you really want changes, you've got to do both of them. And so what you're doing is wonderful for starting. And when people ask me, I don't know if you know, I'm also a personal trainer. So I have not trained in a few years, but
I didn't know you were a personal trainer.
Yeah.
Oh, so you approve of my program?
I do approve.
Oh, thank God.
Yes. I've been a trainer since I was 18 years old, and I am 40 now. It's 22 years.
You're 40?
Yes.
Wow.
Thanks.
Because I said 28.
Keep going. Keep going.
Then I'm like, well, she can't be 28 because, I know enough about, she's got kids that and Colt's 4.
Yeah.
And so that means that she'd had to be 24 when she had Colt. And she did a master's program in clinical. So she wouldn't have been out of school until she was probably 24, 25.
Yeah.
None of that's adding up.
There you
But
go.
I mean,
Now you know. But man, if I was a mom in my 20s, that energy, I have energy now, but wow. Think about that. Anyway, what's I talking? Oh, so yeah. So when the reason why I went into that is because why I say when people ask me, what do I do to get started? Or should I do cardio or should I do strength training? Or what should I do first? My answer is always going to be first is what will you do? That's it. Because if I tell you, swimming is the best thing you could do, it works your whole body and all different movements. Are you going to go swimming? I wouldn't. I don't want to get my hair wet. I don't have to redo my makeup. I don't want to plan my times. I don't want to get in a bathing suit. I don't want to do any of that. So even if I know, that's the best thing I could do, it's not going to happen. If I tell someone they need to, a Stairmaster, good for you for doing that because, man, that is a beating. But somebody might not do that. So I always would say, what will you do? And so it sounds like what you like these things, this is what you will do. One of the best things that we really can do for our body is one of the things you're doing, which is strength training. Whenever we have that lean muscle mass, and you're not going to get lean muscle mass unless you are breaking through that muscle tissue and you're working your body, let me get back to that in a minute. Whenever you're breaking through that lean muscle, actually, sorry, my mind's on that thought, so I'm going to stay with it. If I was going to say not doing 3-pound bicep curls, but if that's what somebody can lift at that time, great. I'm not saying don't do that, but not doing that 100 times. You really need something. You need that weight to be where you're lifting, maybe doing a bicep curl. You're kind of getting like, ooh, this is really tiring on the 8th repetition. And you really could only go to maybe 12 to 15 reps. Now that can vary for man versus women, age, where you're at, what your goals are, but that's a good idea of where to start. And so when we get that, we get that lean muscle mass, our body is working for us. We are sitting here burning 3,000, maybe more calories a day, just sitting here doing nothing, which is incredible. We've talked about, it's not about calories in versus calories out, but I don't mean that on that level. I just mean it with your body being metabolically active.
Metabolic. I think a lot of, I think people miss a lot of the value of metabolic health is that, like anything else, if you're metabolically healthy, you're metabolically active.
Yeah.
It's metabolic activity, not just movement activity.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yes, because I think people can think that they move and they're doing well, like maybe gardening. Gardening is great. But I do think there's so much education out there that even if you're just doing gardening, you're moving and you're doing okay. Again, I think it's great. You're outside, you're getting vitamin D, you are moving your body, you're doing hard work, you're pulling weeds, you might be out there for 3 hours. That is wonderful. But what we really need to think about, and I love that you brought that up, is not just that movement. Movement is incredible, but is what are we doing to really get metabolically active, metabolically fit, making our muscles work, that lean muscle that we need. And unfortunately, I feel I so appreciate you bringing this up also of how you're just getting into it, because I think that's the way most of us are. We don't really realize, this movement is key. I do want to be fully alive and independent and living freely in my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We don't realize that until we go through maybe something that you went through. And you're like, wait a minute, I don't want to be in a walker. I don't want to be the one that's only taking the elevator and that I can't move my hips. Or we start to feel, I'm having hip issues and I'm having knee issues. And I think we start to feel that in our 30s or our 40s. So many people talk about, I'm getting older, which is true. Like I, for sure, I'm at more risk for injury. And I've seen that. But maybe we're getting older and we do have a knee issue come out or knee issue happen, or our hips are tight. And a lot of times that pushes people back. I can't exercise because I don't want to make that worse. When that's the one thing that we need to do in the right way to make our body start moving again, get the synovial fluid moving in our joints. So we're not having issues. We're not waking up. It's not normal to wake up with your knees cracking or your trouble to getting out of bed. And I do think we've grown up with, as we get older, we age and our body ages and it's harder to move and we become less active. And truly, I don't believe that's the way it is. Our body does not have to age at the significant decline that it ages. I believe it's at the age of 25. I know it's in your 20s. We lose 1% of muscle mass quickly. It just starts going, which is why collagen is a really good supplement to take, but also with exercise. But we don't realize that we're losing muscle mass every month, every year, and we can get it back, but it's really important to do as soon as we can.
Well, and I think that if you prioritize strength training, I think too many people prioritize cardiovascular training because they have, again, in the same way that we've not done well with the food pyramid, we've not done well with the exercise prescription that we give people. We've given people the exercise prescription that you just walk. Andrew Weil was big about just walk.
Yeah.
If you walk 20 minutes a day, you're going to have everything that you need. Walking 20 minutes a day doesn't help you carry that bag of groceries in from the car.
Yeah.
Period. Walking 20 minutes a day does not help you get out of a chair without your hands.
Sure.
There is significant, I think there is significant longevity advantage, and I think there's significant lifestyle advantage to being strong. It's hard,
yes.
It's harder to kill strong people. I'm just saying.
We were walking out of church today, and Chris had our 2-year-old Caden, and Colton wanted me to hold him, and he's 4, so I don't know how much he weighs now. I'll pay attention to that. It's funny when doctor just asked me the other day when he was a visit. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway. So Colt wanted me to hold him. So I was holding him and acting like he was like a bag of trash, right? And flipping him around. And I'm just holding him like this. And I was thinking, I started doing lunges with him, right? And I was thinking, this is so fun. And that's functional training. Holding a child alone is functional movement. Functional means, what do we do in our everyday life? When you pick up groceries, do you just pick them up slowly? No, you usually just grab them, right? You're yanking them out of the car. You've got multiple ones on your hand. You're kicking the door with your foot closed, and you're trying to get the door open with your arm. Usually that's when an injury can happen. But if we're on top of it and we're doing these functional movements of strength training, those functional movements in our daily life, we do better. But what I was thinking about, just funny you're bringing this up today, is this is so fun for me, but it's so fun for my child.
Exactly.
Right? He has no idea that this is not normal, which I hate to think that way. It's not normal for us to have that movement, to be able to hold a child alone like that. I feel like I'm like bragging. I swear, people, I am not bragging. I'm talking. This is the movement that we should be able to be able to do. But anyway, and to be able to like play with him and lunge or jump up and down with him, and it's that functional strength training that is the key to that. What was my point of me saying that?
That strength. I think prioritizing strength is more important than prioritizing cardiovascular.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Because yes, that's where I was going with it. Is of those functional movements if you pick up a baby, if you are getting stuff out of your car, you're picking up your luggage. Again, that's where those injuries happen, but they don't have to happen like that. If you are doing functional movements where you're picking up a kettlebell or a dumbbell and you're moving it this way, you're doing the windmills that you're talking about. We can train our body to do that. So when we're in our daily life, holding a cell phone, having a bag of groceries, kicking the door closed with the car, that's just like our body's like, oh yeah, I got it.
And you know what? One of the most interesting kettlebell exercises, I have never before this evolution worked out with kettlebells. Just never have.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a normal.
But the one that's the most interesting to me is just doing circles, passing the kettlebell behind your back and in front and behind your back and in front and behind your back and in front, and then reversing direction.
Yes, I love that you're doing that.
The amount of engagement in core and in shoulders, and it's really you're talking about functional strength. It is really interesting to be having been as sedentary and as detrained. I'm more detrained than I've ever been. To be so detrained that taking a 25-pound kettlebell and doing circles with it is a functional challenge.
Yes.
I got to be paying attention about getting it moving enough to get the flexibility enough to get it to the hand behind the back to get it back around to the front. And that's really interesting. And that functional health. And that's why I want to talk about just a little bit before we talk about low carb, that we're going to talk about low carb today. And talking about low carb is the basis for this, but there's a lot of other things that you can do in terms of lifestyle that we'll talk about in the long term that will really leverage the advantage that you give yourself metabolically with low carbohydrate.
Yes, absolutely. And before we go into that, I just want to make sure I say, one, that's amazing that you're doing that. And those movements, our core, remember that our core is what holds us up, our core and our back all day long. And so you're firing every part of your body, but especially your core, which is where we can receive so much injury. And if we have a knee pain or we have a knee injury, it probably stemmed from maybe hips or maybe hip movement or hip flexibility. Ankles, same thing. Like our body is so connected. And so if you can get connected with your body in your workouts, that's great. The last thing I want to say before we move on, so I can just help people understand, if you're like, well, I don't want to get into kettlebells, or I don't have a gym, or I don't know, this is a lot. We had mentioned the difference between metabolically fit and metabolic movement, or metabolically active and metabolic movement, or just moving in general. And I want to make sure people understand it's okay if you just move. I have somebody I'm working with now that he's busy. He's in school. I mean, he's busy like all of us. We're all busy, right? And my key to him in these next 3 weeks is, I don't care if you are outside for 5 or 10 minutes. I'd like 10 minutes walking, treadmill, whatever it is, because I just need you to stay in the habit of exercise. That's it. If you're in a funk, you had a bad workout, it's only 10 minutes. That's awesome. Just show up, move your body. One, you're moving your body, so that's great, but you're also getting in that habit. So I'm sure we'll talk about this on another podcast, but I want to make sure people know, just start moving. And
that was the thing that about 3 months ago, there's a study out. One of the things there's a study out that talks about increasing your insulin sensitivity, and one of the simple exercises that has shown a significant amount of ability to upregulate insulin sensitivity was just body weight squats. Mm-hmm. Do 3 sets of 10 body weight squats during the day. Yeah.
Love it.
Major muscle group, especially squats, and engages the glutes, especially if you do the squat right. And you lead, if you put the weight on your heel and come up and feel the sacrum, start the movement and all that stuff. And that's all good posterior chain stuff.
Yes.
And I thought, I'll start doing that. And the fact that the third set of 10 body weight squats spread out by, I just thought about it, I'll do it. I just thought about it, I'll do it. That afternoon, when I was in the third set of 10 body weight squats, I was feeling it significantly at about 6 and going, I don't know if I'm going to get 10. That's when the alarm bells went off for me, that I had lost so much strength that it wasn't even funny.
Sure.
And to your point, just move. Do 10 body weight squats. You don't have to have a kettlebell to do that. All you have to have is, nothing.
Yeah.
And while you're doing it, then maybe plank, mm-hmm. which is another great thing for the core. Mm-hmm. And if you do that and it wears you smooth out, it may be an indicator for you that there's other things you need to do.
Yeah. Plank, squats, crunches, try a lunge. We'll go into another time. Do 10 reps each, 5 reps, whatever. But I love that you're becoming aware of it, and it helps with the insulin sensitivity so much because it's bringing that glucose down. Now, your glucose can rise after a hard workout. We have a cortisol spike whenever you do exercise. It does increase our cortisol, which is our stress hormone. Hello. Go back to that. Sorry. When we do exercise, it does increase our cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And then that increases our insulin, our blood sugar. But that's okay. It's going to come down. There is a stress in our body. Now, there are things that you can do for cortisol resistance training plans. Another day, another topic. But the main thing is strength training. But know that if you saw blood sugar rise, like using your CGM, your continuous glucose monitor, we're going to see it go down pretty quick. But exercise is so great for the insulin levels and great for lowering your blood sugar.
And metabolic health.
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about metabolic health. We've talked about insulin. We've talked about how insulin's important. We talked about homeostasis. But one of the most fascinating things to me is that sitting just at 100 milligrams per deciliter or normal blood sugar, you've got a teaspoon of sugar circulating in your blood.
Right.
A teaspoon. And if you drink a Coke, a can of Coke has like 40 grams of carbs.
Yes.
That's 8 times more sugar than your body wants circulating in your bloodstream. That is a metabolic crisis if you drink a can of Coke, because your body wants 5 milligrams per deciliter and you just gave it 40.
And fast. Because how fast you drink a Coke? I could down a Coke.
And fast. So let's talk about, we swim in an ocean of carbohydrates.
Yes.
How do you go about learning what carbohydrates are, where you get them, which are the ones that you really need to avoid, and how do you then start a low carb or lower carb lifestyle? And I want to make the point here. There's a difference between better and good. And while we certainly want to strive to be better, I would point out that with carbohydrates, you probably need to be not just better, but good. So, first of all, what are carbs? When we say carbohydrates in a low carb lifestyle, what are the foods that are in the bucket of carbohydrates?
So carbs are, first, know that the best thing people can do is look at labels. Just start looking at labels, or putting into like MyFitnessPal app and starting to see what foods have carbohydrates in them. They can be anything like fruit, which has carbs, but remember also that all foods affect your body differently. So you've got your fruits, you've got any beans, legumes, lentils, any bread, rice, pasta. And then you have vegetables that have carbohydrates, but you've got your really starchy vegetables like
root
corn,
vegetables,
peas. Yep, corn, peas, squash. And then you've got your non-starchy vegetables, which is what I more recommend, which is the leafy greens, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, cucumber, tomatoes, those types of things.
So basically, carbohydrates are plants.
Yeah. Yes.
From that list, it sounds to me like if you're eating plants, if you're eating something that's plant-based, whether it's processed or not, I mean, obviously you can't, you don't go out and eat wheat, you eat bread, which is processed from wheat. Basically, if it's a plant, it's a carbohydrate.
Sure. Fair? Sure. Yes. And then it can go into certain processing, and that's what matters. But yes. Okay.
So we live in this sea of carbohydrates. Everything that, and you've gotten me. I think I told you, we had a container of heavy cream in the house.
Okay.
And I went to read the label on the heavy cream. I mean, how complicated can this be? It's heavy cream. There were 4 ingredients in a container of cream.
Yeah.
Carrageenan, guar gum, and I don't remember what it's like. It's just cream.
Yeah.
So you start talking about reading those labels and becoming aware of where you're getting those carbohydrates.
Sure.
So it's basically plant-based, and we're talking about how do you reduce carbohydrate load. So what are the carbohydrates that you consider to be the ones that you should avoid at all costs?
So any ultra-processed foods that have carbohydrates, I would say, I understand this is a little extreme to say if it has a barcode, it's probably not healthy, but it's a good place to start for people to think, okay, now I'll always meet you where you are, right? There are things that are going to have barcodes. I get it, but that is a good way to look at it. But anything that is boxed or we've talked about before, more than really 4 ingredients, or
if it comes in a bag or a box or a bottle with a barcode, you probably don't want to eat it.
Yes, very much. You had asked, where do we find? What did you ask? What was your question?
So what are the carbs that you really want to avoid? I mean, it's so processed foods.
Yeah, processed foods, any sugars, can you edit that?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Any so sugar-filled teas, if you ever had, I can't believe Arizona tea. Did you know that's still around? Do you remember Arizona tea? 99 cent at a gas? It's still 99 cents. saw it the other day. I'm like, I can't believe Arizona tea is still 99 cents. Anyway, loaded with sugar. Any sodas? Anything? Am I missing anything? No. Those are going to be your main things.
Well, and the sugars. I think to the extent that you can avoid sugar, period, I think you're better off.
You are, and I think there's a myth that you have to have carbs for fuel, and or with exercise you have to have carbs for fuel. There are people that can handle a certain higher amount of carbohydrates or beans and legumes, and they don't have bloating or intolerance or inflammation. Certainly, there are people. Everybody is different. That's why I cannot give a blank meal plan to every single person. Everybody is different. We're as different. Our bodies are as different as we are, and as our fingerprint. However, our bodies all relate and in a harmful way when our insulin spikes, when our blood sugar spikes and our insulin spikes. So there's absolutely, man, I don't know why I'm like struggling on, maybe I need to eat. I'm like losing my train of thought. What were we just talking about?
So what are the carbs that you absolutely avoid? It's certainly sugars.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I really didn't eat enough today. This is a really good example of not eating. All I had was eggs and cheese, and then we went to church.
Well, that's because you eat too many carbs. If all you ate was eggs and cheese and beef and bacon, you'd never have this problem.
Oh, no, I was saying all I ate was eggs and cheese. Meaning I didn't eat much. What are you saying?
I'm saying that I find that I can eat. Last night we went to a sports bar. The sports bar had been very supportive of us. When we did some political things, and they had allowed us to do some things in their sports bar, and it was really good. And we hadn't been there in a long time. And there were a couple of basketball games that we wanted to watch, and we said, we'll go over and have some chicken wings, and kind of support the sports bar.
Yeah.
And the owner was there, and the owner was like, "Hey, and he brought over some fried pickles.
Okay.
And they're breaded. I ate 5 breaded fried pickles, and it was kind of a social thing because he sat down and he brought this over to say thank you, and I didn't want to not eat anything that he did. In 20 minutes, I'm just
bloated, feeling
fogged.
Yeah.
From
Isn't that crazy?
5 pickles, 5 breaded fried pickles.
That's amazing. And so actually this really does stem probably from last night. We had, I don't ever eat white tortillas, and we were at my brother-in-law's house, and we had
flour tortillas,
tacos. Yep. So it's really interesting. I was like, oh, can we edit this? I mean, we can keep it.
Maybe. Low carb tortillas. We're talking about the sensitivity of carbohydrates and how people are sensitive to carbohydrates, and how do you eat low carb? Okay. And one of the things that I did for a long time with low carb was eat low carb versions of things. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be low carb, you're not going to be eating Mexican food.
Right.
You just need to get your head around, if you're going to be low carb, the rice and beans, probably not something you're going to be eating.
Yep.
And so I would use the Mission low carb tortillas, the flour low carb tortillas. It had like 4 net grams of carbohydrates.
Right.
Well, let's call a timeout right there. Let's call a timeout right there and talk about carbohydrates come from plants.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's go back and finish. We'll just take all that out. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Carbohydrates come from plants. Carbohydrates come in basically 3 components. There's 3 boxes to carbohydrates. There's simple carbs, there are sugars, and there are
your complex carbs.
The complex carbohydrates. And that's pretty much it.
Yep.
And the carbohydrates also come in fiber. Most of the fiber is carbohydrates, which are those complex polysaccharides.
Yep.
And how do you judge what's a good one and what's a bad one? And in my opinion, the sugars are bad. Period, paragraph. If it says sugar, especially added sugar, don't eat it.
100%. Our body doesn't need it. And that's where I was going with that, is that we think that we need sugar. Our brain can fuel, 70% of our brain can fuel just straight off of fat. And our body can make sugar. It's from gluconeogenesis. We eat a certain amount of protein, we eat a certain amount of fat, but really from our protein, our body, it's called gluconeo, so new, genesis, making. Our body is going to make those sugars from the protein itself. So yes, I think those carbohydrates that we need to be careful of are all those ultra processed foods or really, really starchy vegetables. Can you eat a starchy vegetable? Sure. But what I'd really like to see is the non-starchy vegetables, a thing with lots of fiber. So I know you have heard of net carbs. So does this have, I brought some bread. What do net carbs mean? And that means we're going to figure out how many carbohydrates, what affects your blood sugar level based on the fiber that this has. So this bread says 22 grams of carbohydrate, total fiber is 4 grams. So we would take 22 minus 4, which is 18 grams. So that means 18 grams of the sugar, or 18 grams of this is actually affecting your blood sugar. The rest of it, that fiber, is wonderful because it's slowing down that blood sugar increase. It's a great thing to have. It's bulking up our stools. Does this make this bread okay? Maybe not, because you see all the ingredients in it, but we won't get into that just yet. Go ahead.
But here's an interesting point.
Okay.
For a long time, I did not want to eat carbohydrates, and I was very focused on net carbs. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And one of the things that I ate was the Mission low-carb tortillas, because the Mission low-carb tortillas only have 4 net grams of carbohydrates.
Yep.
Total carbohydrates is like 22 or something. I mean, it's significantly higher. But just because of the net carbs, you do that net carb calculation. The net carbs in the Mission tortilla is 4 grams net carbs, which is, at the time, a great answer for me, because I was trying to hold net carbs to 20 grams or less. And then I got the constant glucose monitor. Mm-hmm. So I've got the CGM on. I went, oh, wow. One of my things that I used to eat, or one of the things that I was eating at the time, if for a meal replacement for me, is to take some Palmetto jalapeno pimento cheese, which is essentially 0 carbs, mm-hmm. and throw it on a net 4 gram carb tortilla. And so there's basically a great meal replacement, a couple of those, and I'm at 8 grams of carbs. The pimento cheese and everything else, that's a 450, 500 calorie meal, which is about the size of meal that I would want to eat, is about 400, 500 calorie meal. Yeah. And it's like 8 grams of carbohydrates for 2 of them.
Yeah.
Happy meal. This is great.
Right.
Ate the 2 of them, and with the constant glucose monitor, and my blood glucose went up 40 points mm-hmm. in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Low carb tortillas. So then I thought, well, maybe it was the combination of the tortilla and the pimento cheese. So the next day, when I'm back to baseline, 1 low carb tortilla creates a blood sugar response in me that is well above what I want to see. So my caution with that net carb thing is, the net carb may not be the answer for some people, depending on what those carbs are, because they may, to your point, react completely differently.
Sure. There's 2 things. One, our body can respond differently to food, which is why the CGMs are so great. And the other thing is, a lot of times it's fake fiber. So there's a protein bar out there that I just can't, I'm sure it'll come into me any minute. It's very, very popular. And there was a lawsuit done, thankfully, on the net carbs and the inulin and the fiber that it said it had in it. Because it was like, I don't know, 20 grams of carbs, and it says it only has like 2 net carbs because of the fiber. But it's fake fiber. And the stuff that they add into it, your body doesn't know what to do with it because it completely changed the matrix of the food. It's not really a food anymore. And your body doesn't know how to handle that. So inflammatory response, blood sugar is going to spike as well. So yes, there are certain things that you want to watch out for. But the carbohydrates that I would say are good are things like berries are great. Any mixed berries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, those are going to have a higher blood sugar spike. They've got more fiber in them. So it's going to help that blood sugar not spike as much and go and slow it down a little bit and help you feel full longer. On your fruit sides, I'm not going to say these fruits are bad, but like a banana. If you think of a banana, squeezing a banana, how much water comes out of that? Not very much. So barely any water comes out of that banana. It's full of starch. It's going to spike that blood sugar so high your body doesn't even know what to do with it. Especially when, does anybody really eat half a banana? Like, yeah, most of the time you can eat a whole banana.
Not even close.
And a serving size is like this little. The serving size is half of a medium banana.
Wow.
My house right now, what we've been given is those bananas are large bananas. So on the fruit side, you want to watch for that. Like pears are really high in carbohydrate. Even apples. I'm not saying these things are bad, but when you're following a lower carb plan, we got to really watch for those things.
So when we talk to people about how metabolic health is driven by insulin control, that what stimulates insulin issues are essentially carbohydrates. What's the first thing? Okay, first thing, if you're gonna start trying to improve your metabolic health, first thing you need to do is quit eating sugar.
Yes.
Period. Paragraph. Just quit eating sugar. That means that a lot of the drinks that people drink are now gone. A lot of the mixes that people use with alcohol is probably gone. There's a ton of sugar everywhere because that's how they make things taste good. And as we talked about on the carbohydrate insulin model versus the calories in, calories out model, the people got convinced that a calorie is a calorie is a calorie and that sugar is just fine and fat's bad.
Right.
So first thing they got to do is got to take out sugar. Period.
Yes.
What's the next thing? I mean, we're left with fruit, and we can talk about fruit but the first thing you need to do is get rid of the sugar. What's the next thing you need to get rid of? What's the next source of carbohydrate that you would say you probably need to do away with?
Next source you need to do away with? I think you got it. Ultra processed foods, sugar, anything with sugar in it, your teas, your soft drinks, watching the starchy vegetables.
Bread, pasta, and rice?
Oh, sure. Pasta, rice, any grains we're really going to do away with.
So you want to do with grain. So sugar's first and grains are next.
Yes. Now, can you eat grains? Sure. Maybe in moderation. It depends what type of carbohydrate you're doing. So let's talk about that for a minute. You've got a lower carb diet. It means anything less than 140 grams a day.
What?
Most.
By whose definition is that low? You said lower carb.
Lower carb. Most people eat 200, 250 to 300 grams of carbs.
140 grams of carbohydrates a day.
Yes.
You would consider that lower carbohydrate.
That is what is considered standard to say what is lower carb, anything less than 140. Okay. Now, because people are eating anywhere from 200 to 300 grams a day. I more see about 250 to 300 grams. Normal is what people eat a day. Usually like 60 to 90 grams at least at each meal. Yeah, which is really easy. We talked about that on the last episode with 2 pieces of bread. We're at 44 grams of carbs. Then we have a piece of fruit. That's 15 grams. So that's 60 grams right there.
2 pieces of bread and an apple, and you're at
60 grams
20,
right there.
25 and 44, 60, 70 grams.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And then that's usually, we're having more than that, right? Then you have crackers, all that. So, so then you were looking at very low carb. Can be anywhere from 50 grams. Well, okay, let me start over. So lower carbs can maybe 50 to 140.
Now, are these the dietitian labels?
Yeah, or just labels out there.
Okay.
Yeah. Then you have lower carb can be 50 grams, right? Or 20 to 50 grams. And then your keto is going to be, ketogenic is going to be about, or keto diet is going to be about 20 to 30 grams. And then carnivore, you're at like basically 0.
Got it. Okay. So when you're working with people, do you move them towards lower carb or low carb? When you're working with people, where ideally,
sure,
you and I are working together, and you don't know what I eat. Where do you want me at the end of the day? You may say, okay, first, as we start working, you may say, let's cut out the sugars, and now let's work on the breads, and now you work on the rice, and maybe now the legumes, and we'll get you from 140 to 60 to, where would you like to see your clients in terms of grams of carbohydrates per day?
So it always depends on where they're at, right? If they're at 300 grams, I can't tell somebody to do 100 grams.
Right, but I mean, at the end point, what's the end point you want to get to?
It depends on their goals, depends where they're at, depends on a lot of factors. However, if I was just going to answer your question, it's hard because I know how great a ketogenic type diet is. But I'm going to say generally, let's say 100 grams. That's going to be a lot higher than what you think.
Wow.
That's going to be a lot higher. But you have to remember what we're mainly working on. If I'm going to tell somebody where I want you to be, generally be 100 grams. If I was in a perfect world.
In a perfect world, you're trying to get people to 100.
Sure.
In a perfect world, if you could wave your magic wand and touch your client and go, bing, here's how many carbohydrates you're going to eat a day, what would that number be?
If it was going to be on and we're talking brain health, inflammatory response, longevity, weight maintenance, all of that, I'm looking at 50 grams.
Wow. Interesting.
Could be 50 to 80. It's like so hard for me because truly everybody's body is different. I love a ketogenic plan and what it does for your body and your insulin levels. I don't follow that. Not in the season of life I'm in right now. And there's certain other factors, but my body also responds okay to about less than 100 grams, right? I don't need to be at 20, 30 grams of carbohydrates. And it's not sustainable to me right now in the season of life. It's not what I need.
Male, female, huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Male, female, huge difference.
Yeah, because keto can be a lot of stress on a body.
Age, microbiome, mouth microbiome, gut microbiome, huge difference.
Yeah.
Were you breastfed? Completely different microbiome than if you weren't breastfed.
Mm-hmm.
Vaginal delivery versus C-section, vastly different microbiomes.
Right. Absolutely.
And there's so much about that. So you say, your view of really low carb is 50 grams of carbohydrates.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's talk about what that means. And when we're talking about how do you eat low carb, I'm wanting to discuss what's the end point that you get to. There's a way to get to that end point, but what does 50 grams of carbohydrates a day mean? How does that diet look?
Yeah.
Because if a slice of bread is 22 grams of carbs, then obviously you're not going to want to spend half of your carbohydrates in a day on a slice of bread.
Sure.
If the end point looks like 50 grams of carbohydrates a day and apples 25, how do you conceptualize for people what 50 grams of carbohydrates? And if that's too hard for this level of discussion, what does 100 look like?
Yeah. So I think, when you're starting low carbs, one of the things you want to do is always eat your protein first. That's going to help slow the response. I actually wondered if you asked that, and I wrote some things out just so I could follow along, because actually those two are so different. It doesn't seem different, but they are. 50 grams or less than 50 grams can be pretty hard to do. When you're looking at, we'll start with 50 grams, 50 grams. That's a good one to start with, right?
Well, 50 or 100. I mean, here's what's fast. This is what's fascinating to me is how different the response is.
Yes.
Because for me, and I, in my low carb CGM testing lifestyle thing, okay, I went and said, okay, one of my CGM tests is I'm going to go to Whataburger, get a Whataburger get a Whataburger meal. I didn't get full sugar because the sugar's just bad. I'm even in the name of a test, I'm not going to drink a large Coke.
Yeah.
Just not going to do it.
Not right.
Just not going to do it.
Right.
But hamburger and French fries and a diet Dr. Pepper. I gained 4 pounds. The next day I was 4 pounds heavier. That's a half gallon of water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Glycogen stores two molecules of water with each molecule of glycogen. And so to deal with that much carbohydrate, I gained 4 pounds. I got 4 pounds. My weight was 4 pounds up. And that's obviously water weight.
Yeah, and sodium.
But how not sodium? I don't believe. Well, Yes, sodium, because eating carbohydrates makes you retain sodium.
Mm-hmm.
If you lower your carbohydrate intake, you need to up your sodium intake because carbohydrates tend to keep sodium around.
Sure. We do with your adrenals, right?
So for me, that's about 100 grams of carb. I mean, French fries, a Whataburger is about 50. The Whataburger itself, the bun on a Whataburger is 53 grams of carbohydrates.
You got it.
About 53 grams, and then a small fry is another 45 or 50. So it's about 100 grams. So I eat one meal. That's one meal in one day because I only eat one meal a day, and that's a 100-gram meal, and my body goes tilt.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And that's normal, right? Some people would say that that's just normal, like that's a normal everyday thing. Possibly.
So let's talk about what does 100 grams look like.
Okay, so if I was going
a
to
healthy 100 grams, not a Whataburger 100 grams.
All right, this is what I wrote out for you. So I would say 2 eggs, and you could throw egg whites on there also, just for more protein, because we've got to pay attention. One of the things what you do when you go low carb is you've got to pay attention to your protein. And so many of us do not do that because we don't understand. We don't know how much, right? If I was going with dietitian standards, they're going to say 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. Well, I'm going to tell you 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. So a big difference there.
So reference body weight or current body weight?
It depends on goals, but I would say your current body weight. I'm going to lower it a little bit, but I would lower it probably about 30. It so depends on each person, but maybe lower it about, I'm thinking of calories, just say current body weight as for the time, but then you do need to lower it because then your body can store that protein as too much fat.
Yeah, and the mTOR chain gets started if you start eating too much protein.
Yeah.
So
as you start to lose about 5% weight, we're going to start lowering those protein standards.
So for me, at significantly higher than where I want. But say I weigh. So my goal right now is 230 pounds.
Okay.
So for you, what would be the protein recommendation for me at 230 pounds?
With you exercising too, how many days a week are you exercising?
Right now, I'm doing 5 because so much of it is cardio and so little of it is strength training.
How many days a week are strength training and how long?
I did 3 days. I did 3 days of strength last week.
Okay, and then how long?
3 days of kettlebell.
10 minutes, 20 minutes?
18, 20 minutes of a set of 10 and then 30 seconds, and then a set of 10 and 30 seconds, and a set of 10 and 30 seconds for each of 4 exercises.
Okay, and you're 230, you want to be, what's your goal?
Oh, end goal?
Mm-hmm.
212, probably 212, 218.
Okay.
My reference weight is like 183 pounds.
Okay, yeah.
I weighed 183 pounds in 6th grade. I mean, possibly I could get to 183 pounds. I don't know that I ever want to work that hard.
Yeah, right. Meet you where you are. I would say I want you at about or at least 200 grams.
200 grams of carbs.
200 grams of protein.
200 grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep.
Because I'm running right now. I'm at probably 125, 130 grams of protein, and it's hard to get 130 grams of protein.
It is.
I can't imagine what it would take to get. Okay, so 2 eggs and a couple of egg whites.
And let me go back because you said you were doing 3 days a week of strength training. Because I said at least 200 grams. I would have you at max 200 grams, at least 180 of protein.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and it would be, I'd play with calculations on that.
So
right?
200 grams of protein.
Yeah.
Is 800 calories.
Yep. Very good. Quick math. Yep. So if you're looking at carbs, 2 eggs, 2 egg whites, scrambled spinach and mushrooms, right? Just made that for my kids this morning. Yes, kids will eat that if somebody's listening to that. Just put a lot of cheese on it. Slice of low carb toast if you wanted, but I would really recommend berries. Okay, now this I would change for you a little bit just because of weight wise. So that's at 15 grams of carbs right there.
Berries would be 15 grams.
If we're looking at 100 grams a day, you got your berries, which are going to be right about almost 15 grams of carbs.
Yeah, 15 grams of carbs and berries, and eggs are really 0.8
Yeah.
or so. I mean, it's just negligible.
Barely even, I don't even count them. So then lunch, chicken salad, salad. What's the great thing about this is you could put so many vegetables on salad, right? I put red peppers, yellow peppers, orange peppers. I cut them up the week before. Walnuts, tomatoes, cucumbers. I'll even shred zucchini, which you can't even taste in there. But you can get so much that's going to make you so full. And then just get an oil vinaigrette dressing, put the chicken on it.
And the key here with chicken salad is make it yourself.
Yeah. And if you can have that stuff ahead of time, like I have the salad spinner in our fridge right now, but I just put a whole bunch of spinach in yesterday. Yep. Did it all up. It's sitting in there. Now I would have liked to shred it all up because that's the way I'll eat a salad. Like if you give it to me whole, it's just not going to happen. I have to shred it up like a child. So I'll shred it. It's not there. So I need to make sure I do that when I go home. Anyway, but that's already there, right? And then you grab some chickpeas, which are great. Some people, it can be inflammatory too, and some feta cheese, and you've got an awesome salad.
Okay, so lunch is a chicken salad. What, a piece of chicken on a bed of some lettuce and some other things.
Olive oil vinaigrette, feta cheese, and then you got your chickpeas. So your chickpeas and maybe some vegetables going to be about 25 grams of carbs right there.
So you're at 40.
Yep. Then we're looking at a snack. Okay, now this is at 100 grams. That's the only reason why I'm saying this. Greek yogurt, raspberries, chia seeds. That'll put you at 15 grams.
Okay.
Okay. But make sure you do a half cup of yogurt, because if you do a full cup, like I might mention with some people, then you have your raspberries on top. Well, now you're going to have another 15 grams of carbs. Dinner, salmon or some type of fish, broccoli, half a sweet potato, but sweet potato means the size of the palm of your hand, or like the size of like a computer mouse, which is not what a lot of people have. That's 30 grams because that sweet potato is loaded with carbohydrates.
Loaded. Well, sweet potatoes are one of those.
So great.
Sweet potatoes are one of those things that for me are the difference. People talk about the difference between better and good. Yes, sweet potatoes might be better because of the fiber than a russet potato.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's good.
That's right. Yeah, because that russet potato is going to spike that blood sugar, spike the insulin.
So that's what a day looks like at 100 grams.
Yeah, and then I put in there like for a snack. What would you have for a snack? So a handful of almonds or walnuts would be great, and those could be about 10 to 15 grams of carbohydrate. That's 100 grams of carbs right there in the day. Not what a lot of people. Significantly better for people. Significantly better. Half of what many people eat. Like just like you said, what a hamburger does, or at a fast food restaurant, that's 100 grams. Now, if we are looking at 20 to 50 grams, okay, I don't want to lose my train of thought, so that's why I did this. 20 to 50, under 50 grams, let's say. Scrambled eggs, spinach, cheese, 3 grams of carbs. That's it, right? A half of avocado and olive oil, that's 2 grams of carbs. That's majority what I eat every morning. That's what I feed my kids in the morning. You want straight protein in the morning if you can. It's going to feed your brain exponentially. But the biggest thing is it's not going to cause that blood sugar spike, which is, anybody's listening, make sure you listen to that last episode. That was so great on insulin and why that matters. But it's not going to spike your blood sugar, which is spiking insulin, which is going to make you crash in the day, but also increase that ghrelin hormone, which is making you crave more food and you're snacking all day. For lunch, it would be, I put salmon or a fish. If you don't like that, change it to chicken, Brussels sprouts, and butter. That's 8 grams of carbs.
Salmon is the vegetable of meat.
Oh, that's what my husband says. I try to get him to eat it. You serve it in all different ways. No. Okay, I saw that face.
You can serve a bunch of things in all different ways.
I've tried with this.
Fish is the vegetable of meat.
And then I would do a side salad with like some dressing, 4 grams of carbs.
And important to make your own dressing. I mean, the thing about all of this is to accomplish what it is that we're talking about here. Really what you're talking about is you need to quit buying things in bags and boxes in bottles with barcodes.
Yes.
To achieve this, you're really going to have to get committed to buying ingredients instead of buying food.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want big changes, you got to make big changes. And it's okay if you need to start with the small changes. And I think that is what inhibits a lot of us from getting started on multiple things, is just making the small changes, and then it will add up. And really quick before we go on next, because you might want to hear about dinner.
We'll talk about what's dinner.
That's what I meant for dinner.
So your dinner, salmon and...
Nope, that was lunch. And then dinner would be ribeye steak, garlic butter, sauteed mushrooms. That's 7 grams of carbs. And so instead of that sweet potato, I put in there like a cauliflower mashed potatoes with cheese, and you could even do heavy cream, which makes it so good. You don't have to do the heavy cream, but I do recommend it for you don't need much, just for a little bit. And that's 5 grams of carbs. Right there, that's under 50 grams. And that's a really good, that's tasty. It's going to make you feel full. And remember, you don't have the insulin spike. You don't have the glucose spike and insulin spike that makes you hungry all day. So when people look at that and they're like, I don't know, that's all I could eat. Yes. Now, it might take some time. You're going to take some detox. Your body's got to normalize, get back to homeostasis. But give it 4 days, and then especially give it 2 weeks. You'll feel amazing.
It's interesting. Benjamin Bickman, he studies insulin and bioenergetics, and it's interesting that you talked about protein first. He's an alliteration guy, and I like him because he does alliterations. And his keys to longevity is, number 1, prioritize protein. Number 2, control carbs. Number 3, fill with fat.
Yes.
And number 4, avoid boxes and bags with barcodes.
Mm-hmm. You got it. That's exactly it. We make nutrition is complicated. It's a science, and it's ever changing. The things we talk about today, in 10 years, so much may have changed, right? We might find so many things, which is crazy and annoying and frustrating, but I know that we're making big steps forward. But I think on the other side is we think things are, we make nutrition so confusing. It's really not that confusing.
I think we make nutrition complicated because we don't just eat the way our grandparents ate.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because it's so much of the marketing, and it's so much of the food that's there and that's quick, and we don't understand what to look at.
So that's how, so you want to eat 100 grams a day as your first step, and then you maybe want to get to 50. Did you write up how you do 20?
I didn't, but we could do that. So your 20 grams is going to be more really taking all those things out. So you're like anything that's adding the carbohydrates. I wouldn't put chickpeas, any legumes on a salad. I wouldn't do...
You know who Eric Westman is?
Yes. Why does that
Eric
sound
Westman
so familiar?
wrote the new Atkins. He was on the new Atkins. He has the weight loss. He has the weight loss clinic in North Carolina.
Yep.
He's got Eric Westman has what he calls page 4. And he started charging for page 4. And I think I may have a copy of page. Anyway, he's got a little diet book. It's his little book of how you eat. Okay. And basically he said people would call and say, what can I eat? He said, you eat anything on page 4. How much can I have? As much as you want. But you just have to eat what's on page 4. And what page 4 was meat,
proteins,
and it was proteins and green leafy vegetables,
starchy vegetables,
and fat.
And it's basically what we went over, right? If I were to do that, I'm so glad I wrote this out. I'm so used to talking about it. I'm like, I don't need to write it, but I think that this helps. So let's look at our, let's look at okay, so scrambled eggs, spinach, and cheese. Have avocado olive oil, I would keep that. But with the lunch, I would change the Brussels sprouts. Instead of salmon and Brussels sprouts, let's change that to salmon and just a salad. Like non-starchy vegetables, those green leafy vegetables. Kale, you could do broccoli, a little bit of cauliflower if you want in there. That wouldn't be good on a salad. Some shredded zucchini. Bell peppers are amazing for you, full of antioxidants. And then you've got the dinner with steak and sauteed mushrooms, cauliflower mashed heavy cheese. Really, it would just be taking out Brussels sprouts, that whole thing, and taking out maybe the sauteed mushrooms. And that's it. You're going to be right at like that 20 to 30 grams, and you're in keto.
To get to keto, really, it is about proteins and fat. And here's the point that people struggle with when I talk to people about this is, okay, let's say for me that I'm going to try to eat 150 grams of protein a day. Okay. Which is somewhere between what you're saying and where I am now. But say 150 grams of protein a day. That's all the protein I need. Any additional protein is counterproductive one way or another. It's going to be stored someplace or something. It's counterproductive. That's 600 calories.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm going to try to eat, let's just say at the upside, okay, let's say 50 grams of carbohydrates. We'll say 50. 50 grams of carbohydrates is 200 calories.
Mm-hmm.
So after I have eaten all of the protein that I need for the day and all the carbohydrates that I'm allowed to eat today, I'm at 800 calories. If you assume that the calculations for me are right and I'm burning about 2,500, 2,800 calories a day, that's a 2,000 calorie deficit.
Mm-hmm.
And I have eaten all of the protein and all the carbohydrates I can eat, all the protein I've needed to eat. So the rest of it has to come from fat.
That's right.
So to me, that's another interesting point about if you're trying to get people to eat low carb, that one of the first things that they need to get their head around is that they can't fear fat and get there.
Yeah, you really can't. And it's the good fat, but there's so much that can go with good fat. The avocados, olive oil, even avocado oil, you got to watch your sources, but walnuts, almonds, there's so much, even grass-fed butter. Yeah,
lard,
when your body is in that state.
Bacon fat.
Yeah, but when your body's in that state that it doesn't have the high glucose and it doesn't have the insulin that's already working, it's going to burn off that and fuel off that. And I should clarify, the reason why my protein was so high for you is because I know you follow more of a keto or more of a carnivore diet. So you got to have the proteins, but your fat is also about 70% if you're going to be doing keto. I mean, that's a lot of fat, but you can get it quick because fat has a lot of calories. It's a lot of grams of carbs, or a lot of grams in general.
And it goes back to, and I'll say this all the time. I mean, it's $80. You can get online and order 2 CGM monitors from Stelo. It's Stelo.
Yeah.
Which is the Dexcom version. You get a month, you get $80 for the month. Slap that sucker on and look and see what the numbers do for a month. And it will teach you so much about things that I'm about to, as I said, I'm about to do it again because I want to see what exercise does to it. I want to see what how exercise does to blood sugar. But it is so hard in the environment that we've grown up in to get people to eat fat, because fat has been so demonized for so long that they just don't get it. Mm-hmm. So, and when you cut out the bread and you cut out rice and you cut out pasta and you cut out all those things, and start looking at the things that are carbohydrate dense, how many of those things, what are the biggest challenges that your clients face when you start trying to lower their carbohydrates?
I would think one of the biggest challenges with people, I see it more than ever, I know this is a little off subject, is alcohol. That's becoming alarmingly, in my mind, a bigger challenge. And I think that's just the way things have changed, especially since COVID. And anyway, but the other thing that's hard to take out is bread. Everybody loves bread, right? It's easy, whether they're making a sandwich, they're grabbing it quick on the go. I do see a lot of soda pop, although that's not, once people start to take that out instantly, they think it's hard. And then once they take it out, they're like, oh,
it wasn't that hard. Wow.
Yeah. We don't need that. And it saves money. And yeah. And then I think the other part would be this, just in general, snacking and grabbing the Cheez-Its or the animal crackers or the kids' goldfish. I do see that is a hard thing because it's habitual.
There's several factors to that snacking. One, it's habitual. It is boredom, or I always eat something when I'm watching television, or I went by and they were sitting on the counter and I grabbed a handful, kind of thing. The second thing is that that instant rush, that instant energy rush that you don't realize that you've got. And the third one, and I'm coming to believe this is more and more true, is I think many people, I'm one of them, have a carbohydrate addiction.
Yeah.
That there is, I mean, and what is an addiction? An addiction is when you crave things that are not good for you, essentially.
Right.
And no matter whether it's a behavioral addiction or a substance abuse addiction, if you are willing to use or crave things that aren't good for you, that's a pretty good definition of an addiction.
Food is a drug. And I don't, that should really be out there blatantly. Food is a drug. And how are we using that drug? It can either be great for us, it can be incredibly harmful for us. So it's that addiction, you're absolutely right. And companies, if I'm going to make a chip, let's say, and I wasn't who I am and like what I know, right? And I want to have a business or a bread, let's say Dave's Bread, nothing against that. I don't know if that's okay to like say people's names, but he's not going to make a bread that doesn't taste good, right? Or let's say a chip, because I feel bad using that, but like, they're not going to make a chip that doesn't taste good. Companies are going to make these chips and these Oreos and these Cheez-Its to make it to where you cannot stop. That is why on the Pringles can, once you pop, you can't stop. They are right.
Well, we talked about that. All of the big food companies got acquired by all the big tobacco companies.
Right.
The tobacco companies spent decades learning how to make a product that was as addictive as possible. The science on that finally got so overwhelming that people quit smoking. So they had to find a way to make money. So they bought up the food companies and started doing the same thing to the food as engineered food to be as addictive as possible.
It was one of my most favorite episodes that we've done, even though we haven't done a lot yet. I loved that because we're really helping with, if you haven't listened to that, definitely go listen to that because it's really helping with taking away the fear of fat also, but what's out there in the marketing claims. But sure, we don't understand what's really in a label. And if it tastes good, well, then we can't stop. And a lot of times we don't want to know what's in that food because it tastes good and it's easy. My husband just brought home these Dave's brownies, and I don't know what they were, some Dave brownie things. I had shown them on a podcast a while back, and he's like, I brought these home. I thought these would be better for the kids. And I just was like, oh, that's great, babe. Another time, another place, I'll let him know that was a terrible no. But that's great. Put them in the pantry. We have not opened them since because it's marketed as healthy, but it is full of so many ingredients. And
I will tell you from my perspective that if you want to go keto or go low carb, the last thing that you want to buy at the grocery store is anything that has low carb or keto on the label.
Yeah, if it has a marketing claim, probably not a good product.
And I think, okay, so how do you go low carb? Here's my perspective on low carb: is you cut out sugar.
Yep.
You cut out bread, pasta, rice, grains, okay? It gets you 90% of the way there. The rest of it is don't put anything in your mouth that doesn't come off a tree. Mm-hmm. If it's a plant, it has to come off a tree.
I like that. Yep. That's a great way to put it.
I'm not going to eat apples because that's too many carbs for me. But if you really need apple, you need an apple, not apple sauce, and God knows not apple juice.
Yeah. And yep.
If you can't recognize what it is without a label, don't eat it. And if you can do that, then you are, in my opinion, 90% of the way there with low carb.
Oh, 100%. And people would, you think, oh, well, that's so much harder. When you start to do it and give it 2 weeks, and I'm talking to you, I know you know this, it's so much easier. It is so much easier to just buy that perimeter of the grocery store and cook your meat. We cook a chicken in an Instapot or on whatever that stove, that oven or burner is.
Air fryer.
The Pit Boss grill, whatever.
Yeah.
I love that thing.
Pellet grill.
Smoke a turkey every single week. And we have it for the whole week for a family of 4. And it's so much cheaper. It's quicker. We can have that in all certain ways, whether we're having a breast of chicken or we're cutting it up and we're making it into small bites or we're putting it on top of a salad. For the kids, we're putting it as like a little chicken taco thing, which there are some ways you can do that also on keto. But yeah, you're exactly right. The other thing that we got to watch whenever you're starting that in that low carb is lots of water because your body is going to excrete more salt and electrolyte. So some people might need an electrolyte drink as well.
If you start low carb and you start feeling bad, go get a teaspoon of salt and put it in a glass of water and stir it up and drink it.
Yeah, you don't really have to buy like an electrolyte drink. So I'm not opposed to them if somebody really needs it because of the magnesium. We already have so much magnesium lost in our body because it's lost in the soil. But so there could be that as well. But that's the other thing is water.
So we'll talk a lot about how to do low carb as we go forward. To wrap this up, it's being aware that if it's a plant, it's a carbohydrate.
Mm-hmm.
That you probably need, and I think, and we can talk about this. You and I will go off about ultra processed foods and how all the other crap that they put in them leverages it. It's a multiplier. It's a multiplicative effect on the bad stuff in them. If you eat carbohydrates in a processed food, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that makes all that worse, like seed oils. So, but anyway, be aware of that. If it's a plant, it's a carb. That the carbs that you want to eat are the carbs that you recognize on the tree.
Yep.
You don't recognize wheat. Wheat doesn't look like bread. Wheat doesn't look like pasta. Rice doesn't look like that stuff that's in the bag. Mm-hmm. Apples look like apples. Broccoli looks like broccoli. Grapes looks like grapes.
Yes.
Over time, you may want to do a little less with grapes because they're little bags of sugar, but that's kind of
sugar bombs.
That's to get started on what we're talking about doing to start taking control of your metabolic health is be careful what plants you eat. It's Ben Bickman's. You prioritize protein, control your carbohydrates, and don't fear fat.
It's exactly it. And yes, and start watching you want to make sure that you're having the good fats. Like you said, we'll talk about that another time, not the seed oils, but easiest way to do it right there.
Perfect. Then we'll talk again, and I don't know what we'll talk about next time because there's about 27 topics that have come up while we talked about this one.
That's right. But we got you, and somebody can write in the comments anything you want to hear more of.
Perfect.
All right.
See you next time.
Thanks.